Hello, and welcome to another episode of That's All I Got to Say About That. Today, I'd like to respond to a comment that I got from a viewer after my last episode. No, not the one that said that I need to study Revelation more. This comment reflected the very common argument that many Pretribbers cite as being evidence or proof for the Pretribulation Rapture theory. The theory which says that the church will be out of here before any calamity befalls them prior to the return of Jesus and prior to the infamous 7-year tribulation period. And this is the idea that the church is not seen in the book of Revelation after chapter 3 up until chapter 19. Some say that it's after the church disappears in chapter 4. Then what this means, if that's true, according to them, is that since we don't see the church in the pages of Revelation between chapter 4 and 19, that it means that the church won't be present for the events that take place that are mentioned in those chapters. Like I said, some say that the church disappears from Revelation chapter 4. That's because they say that the Apostle John stands as a symbol of the whole church, and he's called up to heaven by a voice that says, "Come up here." That's in chapter 4, verse 1. Well, after he's called, he does indeed show up in the throne room of heaven. Got a few things to say about all that. First, the Pretribbers literally are talking about the word translated as church, which is Ekklesia, not appearing after chapter 3 of Revelation until chapter 20. And because the word church is not used in these chapters, they say the church cannot be in them. Well, right there is some sound principles of how to interpret the Bible. Not. Although the word Ekklesia is not used in those chapters, it's not, the church is referred to in several other ways. Primarily, it's when Scripture refers to what in Greek, the Greek word is hagios, meaning the holy ones or saints. The church is referred to as the saints 13 times between Revelation 4 and chapter 19. You know, Paul referred to the saints, the hagios, routinely in his letters. For example, in his letter to the Ephesians, he did not address it to the Ekklesia in Ephesus. Rather, he addressed it to the hagios in Ephesus, the holy ones. Then he referred to the saints 8 more times in that book alone, meaning what many call the church. I wonder, would those who say that the church is absent from most of the book of Revelation say that Paul's letter to the Ephesians does not apply to the Ekklesia because it's not addressed to them? Well, if so, they're going to have to throw out Colossians and Philippians also for the same reason. Did you know that the word Ekklesia is only used 3 times in all 4 Gospels? And all of those are found in the book of Matthew. And then 2 out of 3 of those verses are in a single verse. Does that mean that the Gospels don't apply to the church? The church in Revelation is also, besides hagios, referred to as those who hold to the testimony of Jesus. That's in Revelation 12:17. And in chapter 7, verse 9, the church is seen as a great multitude, too great to count, from every people, tribe, tongue, and nation, who suddenly, all at once, not trickle in, they find themselves before the throne in heaven. It's explained to John in Revelation 7:14 who this group is. These are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So this group shows up in heaven just after the events associated with the opening of the 6th seal mentioned in chapter 6. After that seal is opened, the events on earth are the sun turns black, the moon turns red, the stars appear to fall from the sky, a worldwide earthquake takes place, and then after that, the people of the earth declare that the wrath of God has come. Well, that's the exact same event that Jesus talks about in Matthew 24. Jesus gives additional details there in the Olivet Discourse. After this cosmic event takes place, he sends out his angels to gather the elect, the Ekklesia, from the 4 corners of the earth. Well, then it's no wonder why we see them suddenly showing up in heaven in Revelation. At least the Pretribbers acknowledge that the bride scene in Revelation chapter 19 is symbolic for the church, even though it doesn't use the word. So, There it is, the church, plainly seen many places throughout Revelation. You see, the word translated as church, which is literally translated called out, was never used as a proper name for an institution or organization in the New Testament. It's used as a descriptive term for individual people who have been called out from among all the rest in the world. Well, there are many different ways that this special people, hopefully including you and I, are referred to throughout the New Testament. Come on. The word Jesus is not used in the book of Revelation either, between the end of chapter 1 and chapter 12. Does that mean it's not Jesus mentioned there in so many different ways? Is it not the Lamb who was slain, the one known as faithful and true, and the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire, amongst many other descriptive names that he's known by? The logic behind this pre-trib proof is desperately grabbing for straws in the absence of substance. What about the assumption that John is a symbol for the church being raptured in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1? There are many problems with that assumption also. First, the scripture says that John was taken there in the spirit, not in bodily form. There's no indication that John was caught up to heaven in a glorified immortal body that we're promised to receive at the rapture. John alone was caught up to heaven. He wasn't joined by a multitude of saints. There was no resurrection of the dead mentioned. No meeting of Jesus in the air or in the clouds. No last trumpet sounding. This was no picture of the rapture that we see elsewhere in the Bible. This was simply John being transported in spirit so he may, as he was told to do, write down the things that must take place from a heavenly perspective. Well, John moves around in his vision after this and is told to do different things. I wonder, according to the pre-tribulationists, is John symbolizing what the church is going to be told to do? Since he supposedly represents the church, how do we know when John is John and when he's the church? Well, if you want to know more about this common pre-tribulation rapture theory argument, you can tune into a video that I produced a few years ago called The Pretribulation Rapture Debunked, Episode 3, The Word Church in Revelation. I'll leave the link to that video below, but for now, that is all I got to say about that. So until next time, may God bless you, Shalom, and Maranatha.